So I mentioned before we started the show today, we have a guest in studio, which is always fun. I love having guests in studio. So much more fun than on the phone. We have Keenan Williams in studio, and he is the Strategic Initiatives Director for the Trump campaign. How great is that? Plus, he happens to live in Texas. I think you live in Texas, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he lives in Texas. And so I want to have him come and talk about that. But before we even get into him talking what he's doing for President Trump, he's got the kind of most amazing story, and I want to have him share that. He's got a website, which I did go to, Keenan Williams Inspires. Keenan Williams Inspires.com. You can read his whole life story there. So that was a long question. So let me just say, first of all, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you could be here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Glad you're here. And I would just love if you would share your life story, how you ended up where you are today, and given the background you came from and what happened in your life and how you become just this amazing voice for conservatism. Yeah, you are actually. You are amazing. Voice for conservatism and for Christianity.
I'm just a voice for the truth.
Amen.
People ask me how am I conservative, and I say, how could I not be a conservative? I've had several obstacles in my life, as I've shared with you guys before, and as you can read in my book and on my website. But it's not just about the story; it's about where it's brought me to, and how I've gotten here, and it so ties with why America is such a great place. Because of America, we have the opportunity to make mistakes in life and be able to bounce back. Because of our Constitution that has built-in redemption, because of a Constitution that says that we the people have the right to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. That right in America creates opportunity for anyone to be successful regardless of creed, race, color, geographical location of your birth, who your parents are, who your parents were. If we don't fight for that, we lose that right.
Amen.
I understand that right more so because of that Constitution, because we have an administration, because we have a president who's fighting for that, because I am a conservative and I understand the necessity of being a conservative. You know, I explain to people all the time, I'm a conservative, I'm a Republican. Why would I not be? All blacks were Republicans prior to the early 1900s. Not some, but all. There was no such thing as a black Democrat back then.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Not one. Matter of fact, when the Ku Klux Klan was developed, which came out of the Democratic Party to the Deep South, they were not killing blacks because they were black. They were killing blacks because they were Republicans.
Voting Republican, yep.
That's what it was all about. The reason they didn't kill as many whites, but they did kill a lot of whites, they moved to the blacks because with the whites, they didn't know if they were Democrat or Republican. But with the blacks, they knew they were Republican.
That's a mind-blowing.
They never had to guess.
Mm-hmm.
If you were black, you were a Republican. Why? Because the Republican Party is what stands for freedom. It's the forefathers that were Republicans that created the Constitution that's 231 years old, which is the oldest Constitution in the entire world. Every other country starts their Constitution over about every 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
The very reality that ours is 231 years says that it was God inspired. The beautiful part is that when we look at that as Republicans, as conservatives, and I'm going to get to my story, but I like being a Republican. I like being a conservative, you know. It's exciting, you know, it's exciting.
It is.
Because I know what it means. When I look at that and I understand the forefathers that wrote it, most people are clueless as what the truth about that really is and what it looked like back then. Especially when it comes to blacks and when it comes to whites and Hispanics and Asians in America. Because the history of America was written by the losers. Think about that.
History written by
our history after the Civil War was written by the losers. So if the losers wrote the history, don't you think that they would on purpose exclude certain people certain colors, certain creeds, and certain cultures, that they wanted to remain a victim. See, that's where the victim mentality comes from. Most people think, well, civil rights started with Martin Luther King. And no, it did not start with Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was the backside of civil rights. We'd have to go all the way to people like Frederick Douglass, who was once a slave, but yet after he was freed as a slave, 5 years later, educating himself, became so articulate. His ability to communicate was at such a high level. People met him and said, you have to meet the president. Your speech is the king's speech. And he found himself in front of the president.
I love him. I love his writing.
And he originally, met with Abraham Lincoln to make him accountable and say, hey, look, what about the slaves? Slaves were suffering. What about blacks? What about African Americans? I hate saying African Americans, and we'll get into that because I don't like the African American thing. I'm not an African American. I'm a black, I'm an American.
American.
I'm just an American, I don't know about the African stuff. So it was cool because he originally confronted Abraham Lincoln, and Abraham Lincoln listened to him. And then he told Frederick Douglass, he had Frederick Douglass to go and speak on some constitutional things, and Frederick Douglass had never read the Constitution. He reads the Constitution, he comes back to Abraham Lincoln, and he says, oh my God, that's the greatest emancipation, a proclamation I've ever read in my life. That is emancipation, because America was always designed to be the place of freedom.
Yes, it was.
For all colors and creeds. That's why we broke away from Great Britain, because Great Britain said you can't set the slaves free when Pennsylvania and Delaware and Rhode Island were setting slaves free. They said you can't do that. And America said, well, we want to do what we want to do here in America. We're Christians. This is what we stand for. And the American Revolution broke out. And in fact, in the American Revolution is so beautiful because as I became a Republican, I learned that in the Revolution that there were blacks and whites that fought together. Who would ever have thought that George Washington had two black men that served in his general council? Prince Whipple and James Armstead.
Yep.
They served in the council with George Washington, not as slaves, but as free men fighting for America. Who would ever have thought the first man to ever die on American soil, fighting for America, the freedom of America, was a black man, Crispus Attucks. He's the first man to shed blood for America. These are things that we have to educate people on, to understand why we're Republicans, why we're conservatives, because our belief system comes out of the Bible. The Bible is attached to the Constitution. The Constitution is a truth. That's why it has existed for so long. We need to know these things. We need to understand that Paul Revere wasn't the only one saying the British are coming. He went one way, and there was a black man who went the other way named Wentworth Cheswell, saying the British are coming. It's not there because the losers don't want us to know about that history. That's why they want to tear their statues down. To try and erase what they've done. Because what they've done is still who they are. See, when you're really free of who you were, it doesn't matter that people see who you were, because you're free in who you are. Does that make sense? I can be transparent. I can be transparent about my past because my past is my past. It doesn't exist in my present.
Yep. This is all fascinating. I don't even, you know what, you're saying things I didn't even know we were going to go here today, and I love it. I'm loving it. You go right ahead.
I'm going to ask you a question. I think I asked this before.
No, this is my show. No, go ahead.
I ask people, when do they think the first black judge was ever elected in the United States of America?
Oh, I don't know.
And people say the 1900s or late 1800s. 1768. Wentworth Cheswell.
Where was that? In
upstate.
Texas?
Wentworth Cheswell.
Texas.
Upstate. No, he was upstate in the east.
Oh, okay.
And he was elected in office for the next 49 years.
Okay.
He was a justice of the peace.
And he was elected.
Over 1,500 blacks that served in office before the early 1900s. Congress, senators, mayors.
Okay. Someone should write a book about all this.
There are books out there. Matter of fact, up until 1855, there was a textbook that was written called the Blacks of the American Revolution. And it was actually in the schools, but it was taken out of the schools.
I'm writing that
It's
down.
like the Blacks in the American Revolution. It was written in 1855. And it was about all the black heroes of the American Revolution. You read about people, Peter Salem. Peter Salem got 14 accommodations from George Washington. 14 accommodations. He's partly responsible for winning the American Revolution, a black man. James Armstead, the very first double spy in America, was a black man who spied on the British, gave them bad intel, and brought George Washington the good intel.
I was reading a book about that. I don't know what it was.
Very powerful things. But
Yeah.
this is what makes America great. We look and we think, well, racism has always been here. We've always had the division. No. The American Revolution, the Battle of Bunker Hill, there's a Battle of Bunker Hill in Lexington, where John Hancock and John Adams were. They were fighting with a church that joined the fight. And the pastor's name was Reverend Jonas Clark. And he pastored a mixed church. Isn't that beautiful?
It is a beautiful thing.
He pastored a mixed church who came out and fought in the war as well. These are things that will educate. We don't need to tear statues down. We need to add statues. To show who we are, to show who we are as Americans. Yeah. The Europeans figured it out early on. That's why they painted the picture of the Delaware. Americans didn't paint the picture of the Delaware with George Washington. The Europeans did that. And if you notice, on the front of the boat, there are two black men on the front. But in the middle of the boat, there's a woman. Did you know that?
No, I'm not. And I even have that painting up at home.
Now that you know, you will see her.
You're right.
She's back to the left side of George Washington. There's a woman on the boat rowing.
Okay.
The reason she was added is because the Europeans wanted to encourage the other Europeans by saying, look what America has done to win the war.
Yeah.
Men, women, blacks and whites have come together to fight for America's freedom, because that's what America is about. We've always been about that. This is nothing new.
I love all of that. I will say, I think, on the tearing the statues down, I agree wholeheartedly that it's a very sinister and ugly thing. And it was just jumping ahead too far. But I'll plant the seed to say for later. I think that pulling the statues down actually is done by people with a very leftist mindset, because they don't want America to remember history, because they want to find reality. They want to find truth. They want to say...
They've lied about it.
Sorry?
The leftists have lied about history.
Yes, they have lied about it.
They want everyone to continue to believe a lie.
Right.
But that's why we have to educate people on the truth.
Could not agree more. I think there's just a very sinister agenda. It's so funny. You've never been here, and never been on or listened to my show probably, but
I know. How did we get on that subject?
I don't know.
You started it.
You know
I
what?
think you started.
It's probably your fault. No, but on a serious note, I think there is what Trump has done for America is he has really energized and reminded people of the goodness of America, that they felt like, not just under 8 years of Obama, but even for a longer time than that, a denigration of the idea of America, the unique greatness of the Declaration and its promises and the Constitution. And Donald Trump is not a deeply ideological student of history. He just knows America's good. And that's what he made people feel like in this. And I think more people began under Obama saying, wait a minute, is he allowed to do that? I mean, people began looking at the Declaration, the Constitution. Aren't there some limits to this?
We started getting away from that.
Yeah.
And that's why he says, make America great again.
Yeah, which is to go back to what America is, to define what it is.
That's why everyone's fighting to get here, because it's so great.
Right.
That's why everyone's, when I look at the administration, when I look at President Trump, who, by the way, I am honored to serve the president. I'm honored to serve the country. I'm honored to do what I do as a strategic director. It's such a blessing that sometimes it makes me cry to know that God would allow me, and an administration and a president would allow me to move in the position that I'm in without hesitation of any judgment on my past.
Okay, on that note, what I think I'm going to do, because I'd rather get to what you do now. So my happy listeners, you can read Keenan Williams' story at his website, because I'd rather get to what you're doing now. So at his website, again, KeenanWilliamsInspires.com, read his whole life story. And the reason I want to jump over it, I don't mind if you give a summary, but I really want to get to what are you doing now to help President Trump? Whatever you're doing, I think I'm already going to like it.
You know what I do? I go around and talk to people. I tell people my story.
Okay.
So that they will understand. Number one, people say President Trump's a racist. He's not a racist. He's done more for the black community than any other president since Abraham Lincoln. He's relieved black colleges of $322 million of debt. He signed a Senate bill for 10-year Senate bill that every other administration had an opportunity to do.
Yep.
To fund these historically black colleges. He's dealing with criminal justice reform, which was very important to me.
Yeah.
Because of my past. He's dealing with criminal justice reform. 4,000 black men 4,000 people were released from prison within 6 months of the First Step Act that President Trump signed. 91% were black. 91%. He's created opportunity zones. He's dealing with mental health. He's dealing with poverty. He understands that economical power will reduce crime rates.
Right.
It'll bring families back together. Because if there's no money, if there's no opportunity for you to make money, then life is hard. That's why he's bringing jobs back. That's why he's really doing that, especially for the black, for all of us. But I'm talking specifically for the communities that are saying he's racist. He is targeting minority communities on purpose.
To help them.
To help them, because that's what President Trump is about. That's what he's about. For me, let me just tell a quick synopsis of my story.
You just go.
Because I like people to know. People look and say today, oh, well, he works for the president, or he's Republican and he has businesses and a great job. And they probably think I went to Harvard. I didn't go to Harvard, but the people that work for me did.
That's a pretty cool thing to say. Okay.
That's a true thing that I say.
Okay.
From 1986, I quit high school with 2 weeks left because of a knee injury and football being shattered. My dream in the hood, which is where I was from, hood was where the black people are.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd have to do the biblical translation, you know. Okay. In the hood where the black people were, you know. Yeah, there's a reason why Margaret Sanger called it Planned Parenthood.
Now that is, you're joking.
It's called Planned Parenthood.
I know
for
it's
a reason.
called that, but she called it
She
because
planned the parenting for the hood, which was what? To kill the babies.
of course it was. I'm not. Her thing was terrible.
She was strategic.
Okay.
It was called Planned Parenthood. It was designed for the hood.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
It was black genocide. Okay?
Yes, it was. Oh, absolutely.
So when I grew up, you have to understand that even television, news, was very liberal.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It was very deceptive. Because see, in the neighborhood, your hero was Superman. But in the hood, the hero was Superfly. There's a difference.
Okay.
If I know your hero, I can tell you your future. If I know who you look up to, I can tell you the path or the road that you will take in life. So we got certain heroes in the hood. And other people got certain heroes in the neighborhood. I didn't know anything about senators and congressmen and the president or electoral college. I didn't know anything about that. Judges and mayors, and I didn't know anything about that. So growing up there, I was exposed to gangs, drugs, streets, prostitution, human trafficking. It was a norm in that society that I grew up in. So, but the blessed part was I grew up where there were 4 streets in my small community that were bused to Arlington schools. So they were still integrating. So even though I grew up in the hood, I went to school in the neighborhood. 98, 99% all white school. Wow. So I was able to experience both worlds. Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah.
Sort of like I find myself at times like Moses. Moses was born a Hebrew,
yes,
but he was raised Egyptian.
Yeah.
So he was really too Egyptian to ever be a Hebrew, but he was too much of a Hebrew to ever be an Egyptian.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Hey.
But God could use him because of his diversity. I'm the same way. Sometimes I'm too black to ever be white, but I'm too white to ever be black. Because of the way I grew up.
Okay,
you know?
yep.
But it was very advantageous because it gave me an opportunity to be able to move in the culture and not be offended or not see what other people saw. I never knew that I was black in my school, even though it was 98% white. We were all family. So in 86, when I was injured, quickly, 86, I quit high school because I was injured. My parents got a divorce, all at the same time of my injury. Dream is shattered. I'm on the couch. I know nothing. I don't know what to do. No one's at my house but me and my little brother. I quit high school with 2 weeks left. I joined a gang. From 1986 to 1993, I was arrested over 45 times. From 86 to 93, I was shot 6 times, 2 different occasions. From 89 to 93, because I got hooked on crack cocaine. From 89 to 93, I was homeless. I slept in vacant houses, no lights, no gas, no water, no shoes, no friends, and no family. I would wake up at times in abandoned houses, sleeping beside people that I had never seen in my life. I would wake up in neighborhoods, on streets that I had never been on, or eating in places that I would never think that I would eat.
Yeah.
It was so bad I hadn't looked in the mirror in over 5 years at that point. Because who would ever want to see what they never thought they would become? So life was very hard for me. In and out of jail, being homeless. And in 1993, I was arrested for several charges. I had aggravated robbery charge, bodily injury, unlawfully carrying a weapon. I had terroristic threat charges. I had forgery, unlawfully carrying a weapon, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. I had like 8 or 9 different charges. And just for the record, so everyone knows, I used to rob a lot, right?
Okay,
Aggravated robbery.
sounds like that, yeah.
But I didn't rob regular people. I only robbed drug dealers. So I was an ethical robber. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I was a robber
some
with
merit
etiquette.
to that.
I had some etiquette about my robbing skills. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I didn't rob regular people. I only robbed drug dealers. That's why I was shot so many times. And so right before prison, they were, looking for me very adamantly. And there was a detective, a white detective. And I mentioned white detective because I want to play the narrative, who was looking for me. And he left cards everywhere that they were looking, and I called him. His name is Detective Alan Patton. And I called him. I said, "Hi, I'm Keenan Williams. I know you're looking for me." And he said, "Yes, we are looking for you." And they had helicopters looking for me. They had dogs. I was a very dangerous individual at this time. It's a hurt young man, frustrated and angry because I didn't grow up in the 3rd grade and say, "Hey, I want to be a crackhead," or "I want to be shot," or "I want to be homeless." I was angry at people, and I was angry at God. Why is this happening to me? I was not a bad person, but I was experiencing a bad life. And I asked him a question. I said, "Would you give me 24 hours to spend with my family if I turned myself in the next day?" And Detective Alan Patton said to me, "I've never done this before, but I'll give you those 24 hours, and I'll make sure that no police officers touch you. You have my word." And for the first time in 7 years, a white detective looking for me, not because he was after a black man, but he was after someone that had committed a crime. But he handed me responsibility for the first time in 7 years and said, "I don't know why I'm trusting you, but I'm going to trust you." And I turned myself in after 24 hours. For the next 6 years, I was sentenced to 6 years in prison for all those charges. And I got there, and of course I was in the gang when I got there. So prison was still it was different. I adapted to it, of course, and was still a gang member there. And in 1994, I remember going in with 6 years with all of my charges. And in 1994, I remember all the people that started coming in, and I got 6 years, but there were people coming in with 70 and 75 and 60 and 65, young people.
Yeah.
Because of a crime bill that had been instituted by a man named Joe Biden.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
And I remember people saying, "I'll never get out because of that crime bill."
Yeah.
And I remember people saying that if it wasn't for that crime bill, I would have gotten 5 years. And because of 3 strikes, you're out, I got a life sentence. And I remember that was so shocking. And I say that because I would never guess in a million years that the person that I knew of the first time was the person that affected so many people that I saw would ever be a person that would run for the president of the United States of America. Mm-hmm. Unapologetically.
Oh, yeah.
That's the difference, okay? So for the first 4 years of prison, it was rough because I was a gang member. And I was still fighting, I was still doing everything. And then I made a conscious decision, and I said, I started talking with God about some things. And my 4th year in, I was in ADSEC by myself, solitary confinement. And the first night I had a conversation with God, and it went really great. And I told him everything I thought about him. I was angry, but he never criticized me. And he didn't make me feel like people had made me feel before that I believe were Christians. Because I remember being homeless on the corner sometimes And the people that were going to the church with the place with the cross on the top would lock their doors on me, and they would look at me like I was trash, or like I was insignificant, or I shouldn't be here. And that used to hurt me. So I said I'd never become one. And the second night, I said, God, if the Jesus thing is what I need to do to be who I am, and I don't know how I worded it.
Yeah.
I don't know how I worded it. All I know is when I said that, the power of God came on me. I was baptized, filled with the Holy Spirit, and I'm running around a cell yelling that Jesus lives and he's real. For the next 2 years, that affected me in such a way as I began to read the Bible, reading Romans 12:2 that says, be not conformed, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Yeah.
So that you can prove what is the good and acceptable. And I would read things that says, so as a man thinketh, so is he. That's why I tell people, you never have to tell me who you are. You will always act like the person you think you are.
That's very good.
I would read things that let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ. And I understood that Moses wrote most of the New Testament because he was educated. I understood that Paul wrote most of the New Testament because he was educated. I said, God, I want to be educated too. You know. And in 1996, shortly after being saved, I read about Joseph, who was in prison. And because he served God, he was brought out of prison and brought into the palace being the White House. And I said, God, if Joseph could go from the prison to the palace, I can go from the prison to the White House. And I saw that. And I knew that I had to make preparations for that. And I told everyone in 96, I'm going to the White House.
While you were still in prison?
I'm still in prison.
I love
1996.
Okay. Wowie,
I'm
okay.
uneducated, but God showed me something because I knew if Joseph could do it, I could do it.
Yeah.
And the only reason he could do it because it said that God was with him.
Yeah.
I said, God, you're with me, and I'm going to educate myself, and I want to go to the White House. In 1996, they laughed at me. And they're not laughing anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because I learned for the next 2 years, I read 248 books in prison. I learned how to walk, talk, and think different. I began to understand that how to control my life is how to make better decisions and choices. I learned the law of subtraction. I started subtracting wrong places, people, and things out of my life.
Yeah.
In there.
Yeah.
Most people say they're going to wait until they get somewhere. Preparation starts now. November the 3rd will not happen on November the 3rd. November the 3rd is happening right now. We have to prepare for that moment. When preparation meets opportunity, it's the formula for success. That's why America is the greatest place on earth. Because in America, we will never fail because of a lack of opportunity. We only fail if we're unprepared when opportunity presents itself. So coming out of prison, next day I got a job. First year, I made 6 figures out of prison. I started my own company. I'd already decided from 98 to 99, I got out in 98, by 1999, I had made $120,000. Because I already decided if you don't hire me, I'll hire you. I don't need a job. I'll create jobs.
What kind of business did you create?
I started a logistics business, moving boxes, changing tires for Philip Morris Cigarettes, Lincoln Mile, RJ Reynolds. And then I landed one warehouse because I said I could do it, and I showed him, and I was very fast at it. And then I went from one warehouse to 2 warehouses, from 2 warehouses to 5 warehouses. So my 4th year out of prison, I made $4.3 million. By that time, I had over 128 employees. Wow. I just kept growing. And I say that not to impress people, but to impress upon people. The importance of being in America is that America will create opportunities with the right administration, with the right laws, with the Constitution being honored.
Yep.
That it doesn't matter where you've come from. You can become rich, you can become wealthy, you can become well off. And I've been rich, I've been a millionaire twice, I've been broke 3 times. There's a difference, you know?
This happens
in America. It's not about money.
Also,
it happens in America, you know? You're an entrepreneur, you go up and down. But the beautiful thing is that you know you can go up.
Yeah.
Where other countries you can't go up. If you're born on the bottom, you stay on the bottom.
You have no upward mobility.
Socialism does that to you.
Right.
So now, today, after over 20 years of being out of prison, by the way, the detective who sent me to prison is my best friend now. We've been best friends for about 17 years now.
That's for the rustling papers I was getting. His name is Patton.
Alan Patton, Detective Alan Patton.
Okay.
I went in 2001, I went to the police station and I called him out. I asked for Alan Patton to come out, and he comes out and he sees me and I wave so he would know it was me. And he's walking up and he starts walking slower because now he's recognizing me. And so I put my hand out to shake his hand. And he gets to my hand, he shakes my hand, he says, "Don't I know you?" I said, "Yes, my name's Keenan Williams. You sent me to prison 8 years ago." And his heart starts beating in my hand.
Oh, sure,
I said,
sure.
I said, "But I'm here to thank you because what you did for me changed my life." He starts crying. He's hugging me in the middle of the police station. He says, "I need to take you upstairs and show you something." He takes me upstairs. He opens his computer. He was writing his resignation. He said, "I was resigning because I didn't think anyone cared about the job I did." That was in 2001. Alan just retired in 2017. So everything that was wrong in my life, we saved each other.
Yeah, yeah.
We saved each other. He's one of my best friends. I love Alan. Now I train police officers when they come through the academy. I teach them how to communicate with minority communities, how to see people not for who they are because they become worse. Because if you see a man for who he could be, he might become what he should be. I train police officers. I train wardens now. I actually trained my warden, that was my warden in prison.
Oh my gosh.
Little over a year ago.
Yeah.
When I was trying to get in school in prison, I wrote over 150 letters to the warden. They were called kites. They wouldn't let me in school because I was a gang member. I just kept writing. I just kept writing. I just kept writing. I just kept writing. And one day after 6 months, I saw the warden walking by and I said, "Here's my opportunity." And man, he's got this big cowboy hat on, you know, like the Eclipse type cowboy hat. He stops the sun when he's got it on. Man, I'm going around, people get this warden, you know. And the guard's like, "Williams, what are you doing?" I said, "I got to get to Warden Jones." And I get close, I said, "Warden Jones." And he turns around, there's like 10 guards around him. And he's like the president in prison, you know. And he turns around and he sees me. He says, "Williams, I know who you are. If you don't write me any more letters, I'll let you in school." I said, "Yes, sir, that's all I want."
Deal.
Done. I was in school.
Yeah.
Persistency, consistency creates excellence, and excellence demands a door when there is one. When there's not a door, excellence will demand a door. That's why it's so important for us as Republicans to take the higher road, to walk in that walk of excellence, in that conversation of excellence. When we fall to the narrative where they want us to fall to, we've won a battle, but we're losing the fight. I'd rather lose here because I'm really not losing, because I'm really winning here. And if I really believe what the Bible says for me to believe, I can't lose because I'm fighting a fight that I've already won anyway. It's all about attitude. Attitude determines altitude.
Yeah, it does.
There's only one letter difference, T and L, that's it. Attitude determines the altitude of of our lives. And so my past has become my platform. My pain has been my platform. I train police officers. My friends are judges and senators and congressmen. I serve on the board for the Department of Energy for reentry now. Guys that work for me go to Harvard. You know, my friends are healthy, my relationship, and I'm not perfect, I still make mistakes, but I don't make the mistakes I used to make. The point of all of that is this: we have to keep America great. Because this is the greatest place on earth. This is the only place on earth a man can come out of homelessness, drugs, shot, prison, to becoming a millionaire, to becoming successful. And then better than that, I work for the President of the United States of America. Are you kidding me?
I was going to say, so this strategic initiatives director for the Trump campaign, you do speeches like this
everywhere
you go.
Texas is my state.
Territory.
I'm the only one here in Texas. And I do nothing but travel in Texas, and I speak about the president, about his policies, about my life, about the party, about what we are as Republicans, what we stand for.
So if people want to invite you to speak at their group, how do they find you?
Facebook or email me. Keenan, and I also own a drug facility called Waterford Counseling. So I have a drug treatment facility in Frisco.
Like a live-in thing, or you?
It's IOP program, intensive outpatient.
Okay.
So I deal with kids, adults, anyone drug, any type of trauma, any type of alcohol, any type of abuse. You know, I've got counselors and therapists and psychologists that are there. And I did that because of what I went through. The trauma that I suffered my senior year, I didn't have to go through what I went through afterwards if someone had dealt with that trauma.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
My actions were a reflection of the pain in my heart. So my goal in the treatment facility is to deal with the trauma that's in a person's heart and teach them how to think different.
You're just amazing. So I love what you do for President Trump. I love what you
Yes.
do for America. I
Thank
love how
you.
you speak up for just America and Trump, which to
Love
me is
America.
which I say so often on the show is the most extraordinary experiment in human liberty
Yes.
ever to bless this earth. And our job as patriots, every generation, is to protect it, to defend it. That's your job as an
Yes.
American.
Yes.
You protect the idea of America.
Yes.
And in this election cycle,
And we
at
have
this-
to.
Yeah, there's no one else to do it except for us, except for the president's doing his job, members
Mm-hmm.
of Congress, but the average American has to feel invested in this determination to protect it.
Yes.
Okay, so we could probably talk for hours. I can tell you,
course.
anything else you want to add? Because I love
Just my Facebook, Keenan Williams, motivational speaker on Facebook.
Keenan
you can reach me
Williams,
also.
motivational speaker, yeah.
They can email me. Keenan@waterfordcounseling.com.
Okay,
Real easy. Keenan at Waterford Counseling.
Keenan.
At Waterford, one word, WATERFORD Counseling, COUNSELING.com.
Okay.
Find me on Facebook, email me. I'm Googleable.
Okay.
You can Google me.
Okay, Googleable. Okay.
You like that word?
I do. It should be. It probably is a word, or will be shortly.
Well, it is now. I've made it up.
There you go.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for joining me. Thank you
Thank
so
you for
very
having
much.
me. I appreciate you having me.
Great,
I didn't
great,
even
great.
let you ask me any questions. I just kept going, didn't I?
Actually, I had emailed you ahead. This was great. This was perfect. I didn't have any. I didn't even have an outline. I was just going to rock and roll.